What can I say? I guess the good news just keeps coming. It's flowing out like the Mississippi River. Ladies and gentlemen, a Somalian elected official in the United States just got arrested, indicted on some serious charges. Yes, one of Ilhan Omar's people. One of the people she says Trump can't deport because they are quintessential to America. We need them. We can't do without them in America. Yeah, one of her people. And it's interesting because even before this indictment, he was facing removal from office and is probably going to get removed before his trial. And you won't believe why he's facing removal. I want you to brace yourselves because you're going to be very shocked when I tell you this. Just brace yourselves, okay? The reason he was facing and is probably going to be removed is because he committed fraud to get in office. Oh, I know. Oh, what a bomb. Hiroshima. Explosive. I know. You're shocked right now. A Somalian committing fraud to get in office in America. Yeah, never happens. Of course it happens. That's all that happens. And it's crazy because you'd think with all this pressure from Orange Man in the White House, from Donald Jamal Trump on the Somalian community, they tried to at least appear to not be doing the things he accuses them of, to not be committing all this fraud. But it's all they do. It's like second nature, and it's not all Somalians, but it's like always a Somalian, you know? It's like when you get robbed, it's not always a black person, but it's like always a black person, a young black juvenile who grew up with a single mother. It's not skin color, it's culture, okay? So here is that story. Somalian Maine city councilor elect and school board member was just indicted on charges for allegedly stealing guns. Unbelievable. Here he is at an annual celebration this week in Minnesota. There he is. His name is Eamon Osman, or Iman Usman. There you go. That's a Somalian sounding name then. That's a big indictment. We're going to zoom into this real quick so you guys can kind of get a bigger picture. That indictment is coming from the state of Maine, and they say in count one, on or between November 15th, 2023 and October 11th, 2024 in Lewiston, Androscoggin County, Maine, Iman Usman did receive, retain, or dispose of a firearm or explosive device, property of the state of Leroy Sott, knowing it had been stolen or believing it had probably been stolen with the intent to deprive the estate of Leroy Sott of the property. And you know this is big because this is a blue state. Maine is a very blue state. And the fact that they're doing this shows they know. Like, this is irrefutable. There's evidence, and he's going to jail. And then count two says on or between November 15th, 2023 and October 11th, 2024 in Lewiston, Androscoggin County, Maine, he committed theft by obtaining or exercising unauthorized control over a firearm or explosive device, property of the estate of Molid, with the intent to deprive the estate of Molid Gur of the property. So this is this is like a crime syndicate, two different people. That's really interesting. So he is now going to be facing a lot of time in jail. Those are felony charges. What I thought was interesting, actually, before I show you why he's facing removal, is in Maine's booking system, he shows up as white. Now, I don't want to, look, I don't see color, okay? I'm not seeing no color, man. I'm not racist. When I see a white girl with a bun and a Stanley Cup, I don't immediately assume she likes Taylor Swift. I think she might like 50 Cent, okay? I am not, but that's not a freaking white man. That's not Tanner. That's not Connor. That's not George. That is Usman. That's Usman, okay? This is not a white guy, but in Maine's system, he shows up as a white guy. And someone else brought up some interesting things. All the black people are identified as white in Maine's system? Is it just Maine? What is going on out there, man? I think this is New Jersey, actually. Are they trying to make it seem like white people commit a lot of crimes too? by just identifying or misidentifying people. Nah, this is some racism, man. That's actual racism against white people. Because how dare you say this guy's white? Even for a non-racist like me, I would never make a race joke. I am a pure, innocent man. I don't see color. But I know that gut is not a gut that Craig would have, right? That's a gut that Usman would have, okay? That's gut from oily foods, from too much spice. White people make apple pie and they don't do that. They don't do that to your gut. I don't know what food they make in Somalia, but that's what he's eating. He's not eating that other food. So here's what's going on. So as he's facing the indictment, there's a residency scrutiny. So he committed fraud that way. More details on that from the Maine Wire. Great source for this information. Because you're not going to get this on mainstream news. They're never going to tell you. I got to go dig for stories like this, bring them out to you, because Fox probably doesn't care that deeply because it's such a small city in Maine. Although it's a major issue, right? So the charges compound an already volatile situation surrounding whether Usman legally resides in the ward he is set to represent. So he got elected. He was already on the school board, but now he recently got elected into the city council. But in his voter registration and candidate affidavit, both list 210 Blake Street as his residence, a building that was condemned in October 2024. So you can kind of understand the conundrum there. And it was following a police drug raid. I think the federal government was involved. So you live at a drug house? Okay. The structure was stripped of its certificate of occupancy. Okay, so the residence doesn't even have a way you can occupy it. And you're saying you live there, and that's how you got on the ballot. You can see where we're going with this. They declared it uninhabitable. So unless he's a rat or cockroach, he could not have been living there, making it unclear whether Usman could have legally lived there during his campaign. City Clerk Kathy Montejo formally requested clarification on Usman's residency in November, citing the building's condemned status. To date, Usman has not publicly disclosed any updated address. Although the property has shown recent permitting activity, there's no publicly confirmed timeline indicating when it may be legally occupied. So, the school committee meeting erupted over his residency questions. The controversy escalated during a tense Lewiston school committee meeting on December 1st, where members of the public pressed for hours on where Usman lives and whether he is eligible to serve. Usman previously voted against launching a school committee investigation into his own residency during a November meeting. Guys, I raise my hand and I say I did not do it. Don't investigate. That vote was narrowly rejected, and his participation in the vote drew criticism from several community members and school officials. Yeah, because it's kind of a conflict of interest to vote on something that may or may not have something to do with you directly, like your candidacy and where you live and residency. During the December 1st meeting, this reporter asked Usman whether he lives in Ward 5 and at what address. He acknowledged living in the ward but declined to provide an address, with his attorney intervening before further questioning. You know, if you ask Donald Trump where you live, he's going to say the White House, and before that, Mar-a-Lago. He's going to tell you, because that's an honest politician. But this dork is like, my lawyer shall speak to you about which ward I reside in. The exchange intensified concerns from residents who argue the committee should revisit its decision not to investigate. Indictment deepens uncertainty ahead of swearing in. The criminal indictment adds a new layer of uncertainty as Usman approaches his scheduled swearing in early next year. Under state law and city charter provisions, officials have indicated there is no mechanism allowing the city to remove a councilor-elect prior to taking office. Yeah, the mechanism is that he should not be in the position he's in. Local residents have signaled they are preparing to challenge Usman's qualifications through statutory channels once he is sworn in, particularly if he continues to refuse to disclose a lawful address in Ward 5. And I believe his opposition candidate is planning to do something as well. Now, you're probably asking yourself, Maine? Like, that was my question when I read this story before deciding to present it to you. But why Maine? Well, ladies and gentlemen, there's Somalians in Maine, and I think they have the second largest, I think in Lewiston or Portland, in Portland, Maine, they have the highest concentration of Somalis in the city. So the Somalians there have literally flooded the system like they do in Minneapolis and some other areas. But in Lewiston, the population is almost 40,000 people. In Portland, 70,000 people, 25,000 people in Auburn. But look at the share of the Somalians. It says between 3,000 to 6,000. It's safe to say it's 6,000 though. So they make up to 15% of the city's population. Meaning, in local races where you have a few hundred votes or dozens of votes that separate races, it could be a handful of votes that separate races, you just need about 10 Somalians to vote for the guy. And that's the problem. This is the conundrum America is now in. It's the same thing with Springfield, Ohio. Bringing thousands of Haitians into the community dilutes the votes of the natives. That's the Democrat strategy, because as soon as those people get legal status, it'll take a few years and most of them will have citizenship. And if they're over 18 or dead, they're going to be voting Democrat. Well, actually, even under 18, they're going to be voting Democrat, because that's how it goes, ladies and gentlemen. But yeah, I mean, in a city like Lewiston, you'd think, okay, well, surely the white people of Maine are going to be in control of the city, but nope. City council seats are now going to be held by Iman Usman from Somalia, Ilhan Omar's people. Portland has 1,000 to 2,000 people. So you think it's just Minneapolis with like 80,000 Somalis, but it's small towns in Maine as well. And their votes are completely diluted. Look at this. Decca Delac is another person from the capital of Somalia. She's a Democrat, and she is in the Maine House of Representatives. And it's like, why can't you just pick someone who is from Maine? Why? Yeah, this is the reality of America now. So this is a Somalian channel celebrating his victory on election night. And I want you to take a look at his campaign HQ, where people were celebrating his victory. Yeah, that looks like America. Yeah, they look like Americans voting for an American politician, right? Unbelievable. Ultimately, no one would have a problem with Somalis, and I've said this before, and it's the same thing I'm going to say now. No one would have a problem if they behaved accordingly, if they absorbed American culture, and if they celebrated Thanksgiving and prayed to the same God and respected the Constitution, but they don't. They really don't, and that's the problem. So, yeah, I'm glad he's going to go to jail. Yeah, that's awesome. And he's probably going to lose his seat on the city council. But the fact that this happened is why Trump is pissed off. It's why we're saying the things we're saying. It's not because we hate or don't have any love for our enemies or neighbors. It's because of this. They're taking advantage of the goodwill of the white liberals in Maine, and they're taking over cities that don't belong to them, and they're ruining those cities, and they're doing it in a very fraudulent manner. If they did it in a way where they legitimately ran and won fairly, then it'd be like, okay, that's a little different. But we know Ilhan Omar was ballot harvesting. We saw the James O'Keefe exposés. They were paying people like $100 to vote for her. So that's why there's a problem. But yeah, it's good to see some accountability, though. It's gun charges, but not, him lying about where he lived to get the seat, because you have to live in the ward you're running for. But he clearly doesn't. That's why he won't say where his address is and picked a drug house instead. Thank you all very much for watching. Let's see where this goes, but it's good news seeing some arrest. ICE is all over Minneapolis right now, conducting operations all over. It's going to be a very icy winter for Ilhan Omar and her people, and we hope that continues. Thank you all very much for watching. God bless and goodbye.